This is a hard picture to look at.
34-year-old Penny Spence clutches a picture of her mother taken just one day before she passed. She was confined to a wheelchair, a victim of Lou Gehrig's disease.
She was completely paralyzed. She couldn't talk. The disease kind of melts you.
Penny thought it was the worst day of her life. 3 months later, the married Pembroke Pines homeowner and animal lover,
I love you, Jack,
was proved wrong.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I was being arrested. I'd never been arrested before in my life.
Penny was arrested and charged with drug trafficking last year after crashing her car into a tree in Coral Springs. She wasn't drunk, she wasn't on drugs, she had just lost her mother and was tired and in excruciating pain.
I've always suffered with my back. And lifting my mother, which she was 130 pounds, the same weight as me, and I had to lift her, and she was dead weight.
Penny often carried her mother's painkillers with her, even taking a few when her back pain became unbearable.
Trafficking, it's definitely not a bottle of Mom's pills.
But actually, it is. According to the arrest report, when cops showed up at the scene of the accident, they found a bottle of Mom's pills in Penny's purse. 49.5 pills of Endicet, the generic form of Percocet. Penny was initially charged with possession, but 1 month later the charges got a lot more serious: trafficking, even though there's no evidence she had the pills for anything but personal use. That is because under Florida's mandatory minimum laws for drug offenses, trafficking is triggered by drug weight only. Only 4 grams of a prescription narcotic will do it. You don't even have to prove intent to sell. Just 6 Percocet pills without a prescription meets the requirements.
I've been doing a lot of praying.
And with good reason, because what is more stunning than the alleged crime is the punishment.
Well, I'm facing a 25-year mandatory minimum sentence.
Under Florida's mandatory minimum drug laws, just 28 grams of a prescription painkiller carries a minimum sentence of 25 years. Compare that to 28 grams of cocaine, which carries only a 3-year mandatory minimum sentence. And even though Percocet contains mostly Tylenol, the law considers the weight of the entire pill. With 49.5 pills in that bottle, the weight was just under 43 grams, well above the 28 grams that triggers a 25-year mandatory sentence.
It's ridiculous to send someone to prison for 25 years for Tylenol, for acetaminophen.
I wish I had $1 for every time I've spoken to a parent or a family member who said, I didn't know this could happen in America.
Robert Beatty, an expert in mandatory minimums, is a law professor at Stetson University and the president of the Tampa Bay chapter of Families Against Mandatory Minimums, or FAM, a Washington, D.C. based organization with over 30,000 members committed to ridding the country of these sentencing laws.
Come on, give me kisses.
And though Penny, an aspiring nurse, was offered a plea deal, she wasn't willing to say yes.
Imagine a nurse being charged with felony drug trafficking. I would never be able to work as a nurse.
Here at the Tomoka Correctional Institution in Daytona Beach, another Floridian is serving a 25-year mandatory sentence. He too refused to accept a plea, choosing prison over pain.
Confined to a wheelchair, his feet twisted, his hands trembling, Richard Pay hardly looks like a threat to society.
Nice to meet you at last.
The Ivy League-educated lawyer and father of 3 has muscular dystrophy and was nearly paralyzed after 3 unsuccessful operations to his back following a terrible car accident.
In the 19, 20 years of chronic pain, I've attempted suicide when the pain has been so severe.
In March of 2004, Pay was found guilty of 15 counts of drug trafficking. The jury convicted him without knowing one very important piece of information.
They weren't allowed to hear I faced a 25-year mandatory sentence.
That is the law in Florida. Juries are not allowed to be told what the prospective sentence is for the defendant. In fact, the jurors in that case, in Richard Pay's case, talked among themselves, and one of them said, oh, he'll probably get a year.
Pay admittedly obtained prescriptions for thousands of pills over a 2-year period by an out-of-state doctor. He says when he moved to Florida, doctors here were afraid to give him the high doses of pain medication he needed just to function.
And you were offered several pleas, but you decided not to take any of them. Why?
If I'd have pled guilty to drug trafficking, it carries such stigmas today, I would have found it literally impossible to get medication in the future.
Pei, like Penny, never sold any drugs and has no criminal record. And unlike the rapists, child molesters, and other violent offenders with whom he shares a cell block, he cannot get out of jail on good behavior. A mandatory minimum sentence means just that, mandatory. And while nearly a dozen states have shown signs of working to abolish mandatory minimums, either in full or in part, Florida has not.
We're hoping with
But Florida is doing something for Pei now that he's a prisoner.
And so the irony in all this is now you're in prison and the state of Florida is providing you with a painkiller, with morphine.
I'm receiving an amount that's probably 10 times higher than the amount I was receiving when I was arrested.
This is oxycodone.
And Penny hands me these oxycodone pills her doctor recently prescribed for her back. Even though each pill is almost 100% pure narcotic compared to the Endicet made mostly of Tylenol, it would take more than 400 of these oxycodone pills to trigger the 25-year mandatory minimum sentence because of their lesser weight. So for now, Penny and her sister try to enjoy every moment of freedom. Praying this nightmare will soon be over, they hope to soon finish mourning the loss of their mother, so someday looking at these pictures won't hurt so much.
I haven't even had time to grieve over her.